So tonight's going to be fun. Tonight is, the mission of the practice, and for those of you that probably already know this, but the mission is to help people get healthier. And there's three key components to health. You have obviously physical health, spiritual health, and emotional and mental health. Because we all know people who are spiritually very strong, but their physical body is a mess. We know people who are physically apparently very healthy, but then spiritually they don't have any spiritual life. Emotionally they may be like a kindergartner. So we want to really just embrace the fact that in order to truly be healthy, we have to look at all those three aspects. It's sort of like the Trinity. So three different components, but they all interact and they all play off one another. And I am not a pastor, so the only thing I can share with you spiritually is what has helped me and what I've seen help me in my life and family and people that I know. Physical health, we've been doing that for 20 years now, so there's some things that we can offer in terms of that. And we are physically, we have bones, ligaments, tendons, discs, nerves, blood, organs, immune system. So there's many parts of that system that we call a physical body, but it's all part of our physical health. And then spiritually, if you guys don't agree or understand that we're in some sort of spiritual warfare at this stage in life or in this place that we're in the world, I think we're living in denial. And then emotional, spiritual health. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a psychiatrist. So again, all I can do is share with you what has helped me and the things that the tools that have been given to me that have literally transformed my life. And I think if it's done that much for me and has given me that much impact, then hopefully it will help you guys in some way in your own life, because we're all humans and we're all essentially at our core essentially the same. I've got a little bit of healthy fear and trepidation about sharing this and sharing my story. I've never done this in front of an audience before. I've told my story on 3 different podcasts, but it's never been recorded and it's never been in front of an audience. But I guess the fear, is just that I'll be mocked or criticized or something like that. But there was a great quote I heard the other day that's so true. It's, don't ever listen to criticism from someone you would not take advice from. So don't listen to their If you wouldn't take their advice, why would you listen to their criticism? So here we are. So I struggled for about 7 years. I struggled with an opioid addiction, pain pills. And it was the same addiction, by the way, that took the life of my biological mother and also my little brother. And really, that would have been my same story had I not gotten into recovery and gotten into treatment, or better yet, had my wife not forced me to go into treatment and get into recovery. And zero chance I'd be here saying this today. Had she not gotten me or forced me to go into treatment, there's no way I would be standing here. I would 100% be dead. So I'm eternally grateful to her for that, and I do a terrible job showing that gratitude, but yeah, she's the reason I'm alive today. So I went to a place down in Murfreesboro. This was in February. It's February 28th, 2018. Is my wife's birthday. Was the day that I went into treatment, and it's a great facility down in Murfreesboro called the Center for Professional Excellence, and they take a lot of pastors and doctors and businessmen and mostly professionals, and went in for a 3-day evaluation, and then 94 days later I came out with a new heart. I would say more like a renewed heart, and it was the hardest work I'd ever done. I was away from my family. I couldn't talk to them. I got a 10-minute phone call once a week, and that was it. And I went over the 10-minute phone call by 10 seconds one day, because my call was on Sunday nights. I went 10 seconds over my 10-minute phone call, and they said, pack your stuff, bring it down, you're going home. Like, you're out. And with me and my story, like, I'm a man. You can't tell me I can't talk to my daughter for 10 extra seconds and tell me what to do. And they said, well, with that attitude and that mentality, then you're going to be dead. And that was so true, because I wanted to live life on my terms. I wanted to do it my way. My self-will was what's running the show, and that's what got me into the situation that I was in. So after I got out of treatment, it was in June of 2018, it was the first time in forever, really that I could ever remember in 40 years, that I actually felt comfortable in my own skin, because for the 40 years prior to that, that was absolutely not the case, not by any stretch of the imagination. My mom didn't want me, or at least that was the story that I told myself, is that she didn't want me. But the reality was is she was a beautiful person, just inside and out. Everybody loved her. She had no enemies. Everybody loved her. But she was just sick. She was an addict and chose men, and had a sick life. And then when I was sexually abused at age 13, I had this story that I was broken and I was dirty or I was bad, or just an awful person. So that was the narrative. That was the narrative that I had growing up, basically from as long as I can remember. And so I'm 13 years old, and I'm kind of like a kid. Like, can you accept that? I'm kind of like a kid at 13. Can you accept that? I still have a real tough time with that, because I look at that boy and I don't see a kid. I see a man, because he's doing like man stuff: drugs, alcohol, pornography, sex, violence, fighting at age 13. And the reality is we all have a story. Like, every one of us really has a story, because we're all human and we're all messy. Every human's messy. We're all raised by human parents that are all messy. We're all raised or taught by teachers who are humans that are messy, and we have coaches that are messy because they're also human. So the reality is we all have a story, and in a lot of ways I'm grateful for all that happened, because it's kind of gotten me to where I'm at today, and I don't think I'd be here without it. So my story was, or the narrative I told myself for 40 years, was that if you knew me, you would leave me. If you knew me and everything that I did and everything that happened to me, then you would, without a doubt, leave me. You would want to be my friend. You wouldn't want to be my girlfriend. You would leave me if you really knew me. And if you didn't leave me, then you were going to hurt me. So that was my story, because that's what history had shown. So if everybody is going to hurt you or they're going to leave you, then my whole modus operandi was to get everybody to stay at arm's distance, because I don't want you to leave me, but I don't want you to hurt me either. So how do I keep everybody right here? Because I don't want to be abandoned. I know what that feels like, but I also don't want to be hurt, so I can't let you too close. And then at that point, people become objects. They're not people. It's not relational. It's just, how can I use you to get to the next thing that I need or that I want? And then at that point, my performance became my worth. My work became my worth. So I remember early on, like, I would dribble a basketball for hours, because if I could get good at basketball, then I would get acclamation, and then I would get affirmed, and then that would make me somebody, right? I would have some kind of ability, and then I could be somebody because I had that ability. Versus being a human being, where you can be who you're made to be, so you could do what you're made to do, and then you can have whatever you're made to have. And then after that, I figured out that if I could achieve in the classroom and maybe become a doctor, then I could get some worth that way. So I went on to play college basketball, although I wasn't all that great. I mean, that's good enough, but I wasn't. My jersey's not retired at the gym. And then went on to be a doctor, although not a real doctor, but like, still a doctor, right? So just all these achievements. And then I met my wife, got out of school, worked in a practice, started my own practice, met my wife, the woman of my dreams, gorgeous, beautiful inside and out, had my daughter, and then it was like a fairy tale. Like, finally, I had all the external stuff that would make me feel better inside. And it was great. It was wonderful. And then my wife got pregnant about a year after we had our daughter, and within about the first few weeks of that pregnancy, my wife's health started going downhill, and she went into preterm labor and ended up losing. We went in several times to the hospital. We went in once, and they stopped the preterm labor, and then we went back home, and then it started again, so we went back to the hospital. They stopped it. We went back home, and then on that third round of that, we ended up losing our daughter in the second half of that pregnancy. And at that point, my wife's health really just took a nosedive. She just got sicker and sicker and sicker, and to the point that she was bedridden, and she has a condition called POTS, which we've overcome now, but at that point she was basically completely bedridden. And the stress and the anxiety of that, and the fear and the shame and the guilt and all those other feelings that we're going to talk about was just completely overwhelming. And I remember somebody gave me a pain pill and said, "Hey, do you want one of these?" And I said, "No, man, I don't take those pills. I don't do those things." So then he came back a little later, it was probably a month or so later, and said, "Hey, do you want one of these?" I said, "No." And on the third go-round, third time's a charm, right? I said, "Sure, I'll take it." So I took it, put it away, and then it was probably several weeks or a month later, I remember taking that pill, and I could still remember this like it was yesterday. And I bit it in half and took it, and then 20 minutes later, I remember that feeling of just like, it's like for the first time ever, and it's hard to really put that feeling into words, but it was like somebody was kind of like hugging me with like a warm blanket. It was like just a sense of like all that weight is lifted, all the stress is gone. I feel at ease. I slept really good that night. It was just like everything was so much better. And things did get better, because then I would start to use it periodically and it would help with the stress, and then I would sleep a little better. And then my business took off and started to grow, and things were getting better, and then my wife's health started to improve, and I was like, wow, this is like the solution. Until it escalated to a point to where I was having to take about 15 of those pills every single day just to keep from getting like violently ill. Just like the flu times 20 is how I would describe that. So, and then obviously physically my health started to fail. I was probably 25 pounds heavier. I was not in shape. I was getting out of breath just going to and from the car. My skin was falling apart. I have some wrinkles now, but my wrinkles were way worse back then. My tooth was chipped. I had breakouts on my face. Spiritually, I was just a total train wreck. I was Moses on the backside of the desert. I was just running as fast and hard as I could away from the Lord. And then, by the grace of God, everything just kind of came to a screeching halt in February of 2018, and my wife said, "You're going to treatment." And went there, and for the first time in my life, I surrendered, which I always thought that was a word of weakness. We were talking about that? Like that's surrender. You don't surrender. You're a man. You got to be tough. You got to push through. You got to charge. You got to keep going. But it was only when I was able to fully surrender and then learn these tools that I was ever able to figure out who I actually was inside. And that's probably not your guys' exact story, but addiction comes in a lot of flavors. It's not only drugs and alcohol. Those are kind of obvious. Those are the bad, dirty people, right? Those are the losers. But addiction shows up in a lot of other ways too, because you have gambling and you have sex and pornography and relationships. And then you have things like social media and staring at our screens every second, and junk food and tanning beds and pizza. And, we have a processed food addiction problem in this country. And the reality is, it's whatever we do to keep us from having to feel those things on that TV right there is what can be an addiction over time. And we've got Hershey bars when we feel hurt. We've got Skittles for sadness, French fries for fear, Angel food cake for anger, Little Debbie's for loneliness. We got all these foods and these tools and techniques and processes and chemicals that we can use to keep us from feeling what's going on inside. So everything we're going to talk about, by the way, is in this book. And I think, without any shadow of a doubt, the Bible and this book have been the two most impactful books in my life, hands down, by a mile. And it's essentially a toolbox, or a blueprint to how the emotional part of our bodies actually works, how we function as human beings. And when you look at that list, you have things like sad. What's your first thought when you look at that list? And for most people, when they look at that list, they say, gosh, there's 7 bad ones and there's only one good one. Anyone else notice that? Like all the painful ones are in the top 7, and then you got the gladness. Like that's the one good one. But I'm here to tell you, those things are not good or bad. They're amoral. And we all know that language, and we were born with that language. We knew it at birth. We knew it as children. And we've forgotten it, and we began to use our brain to start hiding what's happening inside of our heart, versus using our brain to articulate what's happening inside of our chest. And every baby you know does those feelings just automatically, because babies will cry when they're sad, they'll howl when they're hurt, they'll reach out when they're afraid, you know when they're angry, when they're lonely, they want companionship, shame, which we'll talk about in a second. Guilt might be the only one a baby doesn't have. They don't have the capacity to do anything wrong, so they really can't have guilt at that point. So when you're looking at that list in the middle, again, those are not good or bad. They're just amoral, and they're just tools. They're tools that God gives us to live a full life on this crazy, broken, messed up, backwards planet that we live on. So for instance, sadness. Sadness is a feeling that we feel when we lose something that matters to us. It's a feeling of loss. And everyone in this room has felt sadness. Whether you believe it or you want to admit it or you're living in denial of it, we've all felt sadness at some point. I remember I was watching a documentary of the Vietnam War, and there was a Vietnamese lady, and she is carrying her probably 3-year-old dead daughter, and she's talking, and she's saying something, and she's holding her dead daughter, and I don't speak Vietnamese, but I knew exactly what she was feeling, because feelings are cross-cultural. They span all of human creation, because we're all built and born that way. So if we can't handle our sadness, if we can't handle any of those feelings, we will move toward that left-hand column, which is the impairment, the impaired expression of all those feelings. But if we know what to do with those feelings, and we can use that WPWT, that's willingness, patience, work, and time, we can get the gifts that those feelings are trying to give us. So the impairment of sadness, hey Suzanne, you might have to help me out here. Well, maybe you don't. Maybe it's just a battery. There we go. The impaired expression of sadness is a thing called self-pity, which means you feel my sadness for me. I don't want to feel sad. I don't know what to do with my sadness, so I want you to feel my sadness for me. That's a thing called self-pity. But if we know how to deal with our sadness, we'll move toward the gift of sadness, which is a thing called acceptance. And acceptance is, it's not okay, and it's okay that it's not okay, and it's ultimately going to be okay. So there's 4 okays. It's not okay, and it's okay that it's not okay, and it's ultimately going to be okay. Like if your child dies, like when our child died, that's not okay. And the fact that that's not okay is still okay. And ultimately it's going to be okay. Do you get that? So it's moving from the self-pity where I have to crawl in a hole or make other people feel sorry for me, versus moving toward the acceptance of that is just, it's bad, but it's still going to be okay. And then hurt. Hurt is a feeling that we've been wounded, and everybody in this room has experienced a wound by some person or some teacher or some coach or some parent. And I was grown up with the phrase, by the way, when I was a kid, you didn't do any of those feelings, especially as a man or a boy. Like if you're in sports, those things are bad, those are foreign, those are weak, those are for women. I remember I had a coach, a football coach or a basketball coach one time. He called us together. He said, boys, I don't care how you feel. Glad we had this conversation. Like, got it. Like that is not okay. I don't bring that to him. That's something that if I express those things or have those things, then I'm weak and I'm bad and I'm broken and I'm wrong, essentially. So hurt's the feeling that we've been wounded. And you've all heard the phrase that sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Right? What a lie.
Wrong.
Worse than a lie. And it's the exact opposite of that. Because you break a bone, it heals in 6 weeks. If you have a parent telling you you're a no-good piece of garbage and you're worthless, how long does that bone take to heal? Maybe never, right? So resentment is hurt people want to hurt people when they don't know what to do with their hurt. And resentment is like drinking poison hoping that it kills the other person. And we've all experienced that. I used to live in this impairment column, by the way. But if we do know what to do with our hurt, then we can move toward a thing called healing and courage. So if we can live with our hurt, sit with our hurt, and we'll show you the steps to this in just a moment, but if we can move toward a thing called healing and courage is having the chance to risk to be hurt again. That's where courage comes from. Fear is a feeling that we feel if we're in danger. And I remember when I was a kid, I had a t-shirt that said no fear. Like that was like no fear. I was raised in the church. If you have a spirit of fear, that means you're of the devil or you're not doing something right in the Christian doctrinal world. Like you're not supposed to ever have fear. Well, if my 4-year-old runs out into traffic chasing a basketball, guess what I want him to have a lot of? Healthy fear. I don't want to get on an airplane where the pilot doesn't have a little bit of healthy fear, because that means he is dangerous. He's not checking the instruments. He's not double checking. He's not making sure. He's just cowboying it up into the sky. So we want to make sure healthy fear is actually a really good thing, and it's a gift that shows us that we might be in danger. But if we don't know what to do with our fear, we'll move toward what's called anxiety. And anxiety is an attempt to control other people, other places, or other things because I don't know what to do with my own fear. And people who are afraid will leave, people that don't know what to do with their fear will leave people afraid. Sad people leave people sad if they don't know what to do with their sadness. Hurt people if they don't know what to do with their hurt. Angry people leave people angry if they don't know what to do with their anger. Do you get that? So it kind of works in reverse in relationship. And then the gift of fear is a thing called wisdom and faith. It's the faith to try it again. It's the Hebrews. They're sure of what they hope for, but they're certain of what they do not see. They just, over and over again, you kind of read that throughout the Old Testament. They're sure of what they hope for, but they're certain of what they do not see because they have faith. They just keep pushing forward because they know something's going to be good for them in an outcome. Anger is a feeling. I keep doing this. Anger, by the way, is the one that's the most confusing one. It's the one for most people that causes really the most confusion. Because I was told to believe that anger means like ripping pictures off the wall and screaming at somebody and yelling and getting big. Well, that is actually a thing called rage, which rage is not on here, but that's another part of the impaired expression of anger. So we think of anger, we're really thinking of rage. And rage is rooted in terror. Rage is power over someone, where anger is an invitation to someone. Anger is the most vulnerable feeling because it shows me what I want. It shows me what I'm passionate for, what I need, what I'm after in life. So Jesus was a very angry guy. He was angry with Peter. He was angry in the garden. He was angry with his disciples. He was always pushing them and moving them and yearning. There's other words for anger that are not exactly the same, but they're synonymous. Hunger, thirsting, wishing, wanting, yearning, needing. Those are all angry words because they bring us toward what we want. But they also expose our vulnerability. And then the gift of anger is a thing called passion. Passion is a willingness to be in pain for something that matters more than pain. So it's a willingness to be in pain for something that matters more than pain. Mothers are extremely passionate human beings, because they're willing to be in tremendous amounts of pain for something that matters more than that actual pain. I want to be an angry person every day of my life. That's not a rageful person, that's not a scary person, but that's someone who knows what they want and they move toward it and they want to bring other people with them in that process. Loneliness is a feeling that we're made for relationship, that we need other people in relationship. And if we don't know what to do with our loneliness and we can't tolerate it, we'll move toward a condition called apathy. And apathy is probably the scariest emotion really of all of those, because it means I don't care. They say love and hate are opposites. That's not really true. Love and hate are kind of cousins, because you have to have love to have hate. They're kind of intermingled. But apathy is the opposite of that spectrum, which just means, what you do, I could care less. Doesn't bother me at all. And then that leads to evil and people, shooting up schools and destroying churches and violence. The gift of loneliness is a thing called intimacy, or intimacy. And that's not in the sexual version, but it's seeing into me, like me bringing my heart to you so you could see what's happening with me, and then me doing the same with you. It's being able to sit with other people in their messiness and in their humanity. So shame is a feeling that says that I am human, that I'm not God, and neither are you. I don't have all the answers, and neither do you, but I have some answers, and so do you. So let's get together and let's do this thing. You've got bricks, I've got mortar. You know, you've got a hammer, you've got a chisel, let's go build a wall, right? So it's using our tools because we don't have all the answers, we don't have it all together, but we can work together to move toward that goal. My son, I remember when he's 2 years old, he has like the greatest amount of healthy shame. He still does. I remember we were walking through church the other day. He's walking around, he's literally walking down the hall of the church, people everywhere, and he's going, my penis, my penis, my penis, like over and over and over again. And I'm like, well, please stop doing that, stop. But then he's like, well, that's just me. Like, he doesn't care what you think about him. He's just going to be him. That's healthy shame. Like, babies have tons of healthy shame. They're like, you know what? I think I'm going to pee on me, and you're going to clean it up because I can't and you have to. Like, that's healthy shame. Like, I'm human. I can't do everything on my own, so I need you to help me to live this life I'm called to live. But if we don't know what to do with our shame, we move toward a thing called toxic shame, which is the voice that says you're worthless, you no good, dirty, rotten piece of garbage. And that's held largely by the people that are caregivers or people that are parents, coaches, teachers, people of authority that we have in our life. Or a thing called shamelessness, where we have no capacity to deal with our shame. And if you think about it, really, like, our culture has shifted from the years that I was a kid and prior to that, which means you don't do any of these feelings. You stay away from these things. The World War II, the greatest generation, they stay away from those feelings at all costs. And now the culture shifted to the other end of the spectrum, where it's all about my feelings and it's all about my truth, and I want to live my truth, and I want to change society to make me feel okay about myself. And that's why you have boys playing girls' sports, and you have men in girls' bathrooms, because they want to make everybody in society change so they feel good about themselves, because they still have the incapacity to deal with those feelings. So let's make the world change to make me okay. So I think we've seen a major pendulum shift back and forth with that. And then the gift of healthy shame is the thing called empathy. And empathy is a recognition. It's like, don't tell me about you because I know what it's like to be you. Tell me about you because I know what it's like to be me. And the more sensitive I am to me, the better I can be in relationship with you. And then that is the birthplace of a thing called humility. And that all stems from a thing called healthy shame. It's the recognition that we're all human, we need each other, and we can't do this alone. Guilt. Guilt is the feeling that we have when we do something to harm another person. And it's the big D-O. Like, you have to do something to feel guilt. Do something, say something. The impairment of guilt is a thing called toxic shame. Guilt says, I made a mistake. Shame says, I am a mistake. That's the difference. So the unhealthy guilt says, I made a mistake. Or healthy guilt, or unhealthy shame says, I am a mistake. That my humanity is a mistake. And then the gift of guilt is a thing called forgiveness and freedom. It's like, I'm sorry, I did that to you, and I meant to do it. I'm sorry. Can you forgive me? Can you forgive me? Can you give me back for me? Can you give me back? Can you give that piece of me back that I lost when I harmed you? Can you give that piece of me back? And forgiveness is a gift to the person that grants the forgiveness versus the person that's receiving it. And we always say, well, you just need to forgive yourself. You need to forgive yourself. That's a myth. You can't forgive yourself. You can't crawl up in your own lap and ask yourself for forgiveness. You can love yourself, you can honor yourself, but forgiveness is given, because if you can forgive yourself, then that makes you God. Because only God and other people can forgive us. So this whole notion, and by the way, too, that also leads into a thing called self-esteem. Self-esteem versus self-worth. Because I was of the impression that I needed to do all these things to build my self-esteem. Self-esteem is something that has to be built, and anything that is built can also be torn down. Versus self-worth, which is something you've always had since birth. Since the day you were born, you had worth. And everybody in this room knows a baby. If you're looking at a baby, that baby has tremendous amounts of value and tremendous amounts of worth. And they offer nothing to society. They don't work, they poop, they pee, they cry, and they vomit. And that's all they do, and yet they have tremendous amounts of value because they're born with a thing called self-worth versus self-esteem, which we feel like we have to build up over time, and it ebbs and flows based on how you esteem me. If I'm doing good and performing well for you, then that builds up my self-esteem. If you don't like me and I have to withdraw, then that lowers my self-esteem. So it's something, self-worth is something that we surrender to versus something that we have to build up. And then lastly, the gladness. Oh yeah, the gladness. People say, finally, the good one. So if you want gladness, here's the key to getting gladness. Learn how to do the 7 feelings that you don't like, and I guarantee you'll have gladness. Guaranteed. If you're good at doing hurt and sadness and fear and anger and loneliness and shame and guilt, if you can do those well, then you absolutely will have gladness. Guaranteed. The impaired version of gladness is heartless entertainment, or also a thing called lust. And that can be from junk food or from TV or from staring at video games or distracting ourselves with work. There's no heart involved in that. It's all just brain and distraction and activity. And then the gift of gladness is joy with sadness. And joy always has sadness in it. I had this montage of like little 1-year-old kids laughing. You ever heard like a 1-year-old kid belly laugh? Like what's better than that, right? And you watch those things, or you hear your grandkids or your kids and you hear them laughing like that. Does anyone almost feel like you want to tear up when you hear that? Because it's so joyful. There's such a rush of emotion with that experience that it actually makes you want to cry. Because joy always has sadness in it. Always. So those are the 8 feelings. And this is, by the way, I'm not doing this really any justice. I'm just sort of fast forwarding through this to kind of give you a little taste, and hopefully you will get this book because it has changed everything about every relationship that I've ever had, how I deal with staff and with patients and with work and with my kids. It's literally given me the opportunity to change everything. And that doesn't mean that I'm running around crying all the time. It just means that I have the capacity, especially with my kids, that I can sit with them while they have their feelings, and then I'll be here when you're done. I can't fix it for you, but I'm here with you in it. It's the same thing God tells us. It's Emmanuel, means God with us. It doesn't mean He rescues us from everything. It means He's with us in it. So we're supposed to have life, and we're supposed to experience all those feelings, and just realize that God is there with us, and He's not always going to fix it. We have to sit in it on our own. So the willingness is the ability to feel those feelings. The patience, the definition of patience means to wait well. It means waiting well. And then the work means doing the work, which we'll talk about, and then giving it time. But if you're willing to do that over time, you'll get the gifts of all those feelings and all those emotions. So if you need like a little code word on how to do these, it's a thing called emotional EQ or emotional resilience. I think we have an epidemic of just emotional frailty in this culture. Like people don't know what to do with their emotions. They don't want to sit with them. They want to make other people deal with them for them. But I think really being able to do those at a high level, it will allow us to live a full life in this crazy planet. FFTTGG. Feel your feelings, tell the truth, give it to God. That's the shortcut. So the first thing is to be able to name what's happening inside. So feel actually what's happening inside. Because it's just like any other language. If we don't know how to name it, if we can't use the basic vocabulary to articulate it, then we're not going to be able to use that as any sort of a tool. So I feel sad, or I feel hurt, or I feel afraid. Especially in relationship. So this was the key that we used a little early on coming out of treatment. It's just hard to use in a regular, ongoing basis, but it works. I feel blank. When you blank, I need blank. So Ken, I felt hurt when you said that to me. I need you to speak to me better next time. He can't argue that. I'm not attacking him. I'm not telling him what to do. I'm just telling him how I felt in my experience with him, and here's what I need moving forward. And the rest of that is, at that point, is on him.
What did I say?
Well, we'll talk about that later, Tim. Using you as an example. But a lot of times we'll start that conversation with, if I put you in the first 4 words of the sentence, every time you, or every you always and you every time I put you in the first 4 words of any sentence, especially with my wife, it's going to be a fight because I'm making an accusation, I'm making a demand, I'm telling her what she did wrong and what she has to do to make me feel better. But if I could say, I felt hurt when you forgot about my birthday, which she never would, but let's say for an example, I felt hurt when you forgot about my birthday. I need you to remember me. I need you to value me. And that's a scary, vulnerable place to be because she could tell me, suck it up. Quit being a wimp. Like, be a real man, right? She could. She doesn't, but she could. But it's allowing me to express what's happening inside of me without trying to make demands and force her to change or tell her she's wrong or broken or mean or whatever else. So name what's happening inside. Take full ownership because those feelings are our own. They're our own internal experience. You ever heard the term, you make me so mad? You make me so frustrated? You make me so XYZ? That's impossible. Nobody can make you have a feeling. Like if you called me a no good, rotten piece of garbage and I felt hurt by that, you didn't make me have that feeling. I had the feeling in response to what you told me. Now that may seem like semantics and we're just playing word salad here, but if you said that same thing to me when I was dead asleep on the couch, you said the exact same thing with the same tone, would I feel hurt by that? No, because I'm asleep, right? So it's not the action, it's our internal experience of the reaction. Does that make sense? So it allows us to take ownership of our own internal experience and not abdicate control or agency to other people. Because we hear it all the time. These people are they make me so mad, they did this, and everybody puts all the power, all the ownership, all the agency of their own internal experience on everybody else. So the first part is owning it. And then the second thing is to do the work. You got to sit in it, you got to feel it, you got to do the work around it, because those things are telling us, like if you feel fear, there's danger. There's something going on that I need to know about that's a blind spot. There could be danger ahead. And then surrender to the process. And that's giving it to God, because God owns the process, right? I always thought that giving it to a higher power, like I had to be in control. Like I've got to be the one that deals with this and fixes this and has to be the one to drive the car. I always want the steering wheel, and then every time it ends up in the ditch, right? So we surrender. It's funny how when I got into some of this recovery, there's so many paradoxes, because surrender is actually our greatest strength. Powerlessness is actually my greatest power, because I'm powerless over people, places, and things. I can just do the next right thing, and then whatever they decide to do with that, I'm powerless over that. I can't control other people. I can't make anybody do anything. I can't make my wife do anything. I can't make my kids do anything. I can ask them to do things and punish them if they don't, but I can't make them do anything. That's his job. That's not my job. And then lastly is to find the gratitude. And again, like with all these events of our life, if we can't find the gratitude around the things that we've experienced and the things that we've gone through, and even the gratitude for some of the worst things that have ever happened, because it always baffled me, you would take two people with very similar circumstances, let's say sexual abuse, for instance. One person gets sexually abused and they become a drug addict, and then they pass that on to their children and they end up dying of an overdose. And then another person has this same exact trauma, same exact circumstances, and they go on to lead a women's shelter, or they go on to start a ministry. What's the difference that makes a difference? And I think a lot of that comes from gratitude. And then the question, because this is a stress workshop, is what the heck does this have to do with stress? Name a specific example of stress. Somebody name a specific, like what's a stressor?
Work.
Driving.
Work. Traffic. So we'll start.
Being sick.
What's that?
My daughter being sick.
Your daughter being sick. So is it the actual event that's the stress, or is it the fear that says, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what tomorrow looks like.
I don't know how to fix it.
You don't know how to fix it. That's right.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's not the stress necessarily. It's not the event. It's not the external activity. It's what I'm feeling in relation to those things. That's where the stress comes from. Because when you lose your job, it's the fear of, am I going to be able to pay my mortgage? It's not really that I lost my job, like that's real, obviously, but it's the fear of what's going to happen next. And then if you have a loved one die, like that's obviously stressful, terribly stressful. But then it's not really the death of the loved one, it's the sadness that comes along with that. And I will tell you, if you're able to lean into those things, you will have a life richer than you could ever imagine. And it seems so foreign and it seems so impossible. Any other forms of stress? No one's got any other stress? Traffic, you said?
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Because there's another name for stress, and that's called life. It ain't going away. As long as you're alive, the only solution for stress is death. Like as long as you're alive, you're going to have some degree of stress. And we can't control the events of our life, but we can control the meaning that we attach to it. That's the only real control that we have. So, yeah. I think that's all I had, guys. So I will open it up. If you guys have questions, anything at all, I'd love to answer anything you got. All right.
To say something.
Please.
I feel I've been blessed by you and the staff. And whenever I talk with any of you, I can feel God move through you guys.
Thank you. That's a great compliment. And now my shame says, oh, why did you say that? Versus, thank you, I appreciate that.
And I will say, you have no idea how many people's lives you touch by your heart and by what you've gone through. So never give it a second thought when you share with people, because just like throwing the rock across the lake, it goes on and on and on and on. And people are truly touched by you and your heart and how you live your life.
Well, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it.
And now if you could...
And my shame's really going to get triggered if you guys just keep complimenting around the horn like this.
And we speak the truth.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
How many of you have a doctor that will pray with you? And that's them. That's so important.
Well, and I know that's such a key component to, if we want to be healthy, like we got to understand what's happening inside of us internally. Because we can take the right vitamins and get the adjustments and do the right exercises, but if we're missing one of those three, it's like a three-legged stool. If one is missing, that it can't stand. So I think in order to get healthy, we have to be moving in the direction of getting healthier in all three of those areas. And as much as we say that we have a mental health crisis in this country, I don't think it's mental. I think it's emotional health, because we don't know what to do with our own heart, essentially.
It's a spiritual faith.
Yes.
What is faith in relation to all this? What can you do with faith?
What can you do with
What
faith?
can you do with faith?
Surrender, and just understand that I can only do the next right thing, and God has to take care of the rest. My prayer every day is, Lord, help me to work hard to do the next right thing and surrender the outcomes to you. Let thy will be done. Not my will, but let thy will be done. Let me work hard and do the next right thing in front of me every step throughout the day. Whether that is to give someone a hug, or to take out the garbage, or to put my son to bed, or to go eat lunch, or whatever. What's the next right thing that I can do? And if the times of my life where I've been able to kind of stay somewhat oriented to that, everything in my life goes better. because I can't change the past. I can't control tomorrow. So just go ahead and live today, because God gives us one day at a time. And that serenity prayer, which is so common in the recovery circles, is grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today. And that, for me, is where freedom comes from. Because I don't have to change. I had so many plans. Like when I was going to be independently wealthy by 40. And I was going to have a beach house. And I was going to have a boat. And I was going to have and I don't have any of those things. I'm here working every day, right? No lake house, no boat.
But you love us.
Still got a massive mortgage.
You love us.
And I love it. I love what I do. And I'm so grateful that I get to show up and just be with human beings every day. So it's just finding the gratitude in what we get to do every day in our life. Versus what do they have and what are they doing? And we all live on the ladder, right? We're always on the ladder. We're either looking up at the people above us that have it so much better and have it so wonderful, or we're looking down at the people below us that are no good and they got this and they got that. Well, the key is just to get off the ladder, because it turns out it's propped up against the wrong building anyway. And you keep climbing that ladder and you get through the clouds and you realize there's just more ladder, like it never ends. Like, just get off the ladder. Just live today and just to find the gratitude. And if you need gratitude, just know that there's 1 million families in Egypt that are raising their families on a trash heap every single day. 1 million. Their wives, kids, little ones are literally raising their families, 1 million of them, on a trash heap every single day.
It's called Garbage City.
Garbage City.
I've been there.
And we get pissed off because the Wi-Fi is too slow. Or my Starbucks had soy instead of whatever, right? So I think it's just getting out of ourself and out of our own way that makes a big difference too. So, yes, ma'am.
I'll share. At work, I had a lady the other day, and she was kind of middle age, and she was pushing. She didn't look like she had health issues, but maybe she did. She was pushing this heavy cart. It was a heavy cart. She's like, I can't push this heavy cart. She was just being real grouchy. It wasn't that she was physically having problems with that. And she was kind of barking at me, and then she barked at somebody else. And I was like, and as we kept going, I was like, yeah, you know, we have this guy that's in a wheelchair, and you know what he does? He pushes the ladder every day, and he is my inspiration. She didn't say anything else. I helped her. We got through, and she said, honey, thank you for being such a blessing. You were so nice and kind. But I have to be totally honest, I had to go and share that before I barked back at her. But God was like, no, this is how you need to handle it. Not out of your humanness, but out of my goodness.
Amen. Yeah, that's great. Yes.
What is the name of your book, and is that one that you have here for sale or anything?
No, I don't have any more copies left. It's called The Voice of the Heart, and it's by Dr. Chip Dodd. He's the one who ran the treatment center that I was in. He's got several books. That's the one I would start with. It also has a Bible study that goes with it. But just an amazing, it was the first time in my life that I actually saw men who lived a faithful lifestyle that weren't like what I considered to be like the kooky Christians. Because I always thought they were like, the kooky Christians, the ones that are like, I'm going to pray for you. Or in the South, it's like, I'm going to pray for you, how we do it. But they were just real men who struggled out loud. And I remember he called me up in front of the group, and he said, Ben, I'm going to work you like a puppet. He said, stand up here. So I stood up in front of the other 8 or 9 guys, and I stood there, and he got in my face, and he's about 6'5". He's taller than me. And he gets right in my face, like nose to nose. His nose is touching my nose. And so, of course, I'm all bucked up, and like, I'm not going to let him. And he's like right in my nose, and he's going, what? Like, what? What are you going to do? And I was like kind of puffed up, and then he goes, okay, I'm sorry. And he left, and he went out the door. And I said, Chip, wait, come on back, man. And he kicked the door open. He said, see, I got you. I got you. You're so out of touch with your own feelings and needs. When I got up in your face, you couldn't tell me I feel fear and I need you to stand back. So you had to get all tough and big and buff. And then when I walked out the door, your abandonment and your codependency issues kicked in, and you wanted to get me back because you didn't want me to leave you. And I was like, oh man, that's like 10 lessons in one quick second. But there was just lesson after lesson after lesson like that. But yeah, it was beautiful.
What is his name again?
Chip Dodd,
Chip?
D-O-D-D. And there's a lot of stuff on YouTube, and I'm trying to get him to come in here and do like a special. We're trying to arrange to have him come in and speak to our folks, because he'll do that. So, and then I remember one last story. I could tell 20 of these, but the campus that the rehab was on. So you had like the professionals' house, and then you had all the 3 or 4 other houses for like the 28-day rehabs. Kind of traditional rehab was on the same campus. And he called me over looking out the window, and he said, look at these guys. And it was like the regular rehab guys, and they had like wife beaters and tattoos and smoking cigarettes. He goes, come here. He goes, do you think you're better than them? And I was like, no. He goes, no, come on. He goes, you're better than them, right? And I was like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not walking in this trap. I can feel it. I'm not going to do it. He goes, be honest with me. You know you're better than them, right? And I was like, well, yeah, I guess so. He goes, you're worse. You're 50 times, you're 1,000 times, you're 100 times worse, because you got a job, you got a family, you got a degree, and look at you. You're still right here. And then he turned around and walked off. So I needed that. I needed someone to stand in my life, and it was him and a guy named Phil Herndon and another guy named Todd Wormers, who were just amazing men that could stand in my way and just love me enough to tell me the truth and get me, call out my BS, because my initials are BS, and I've got a bachelor's in science, so I was filled with BS, and just tell me the truth, and then kind of show me how to implement some of these tools. And I'm still a train wreck, work in progress.
Well, we're always going to be a student.
Always.
Breathing, you're
Always. It's progress, not perfection. And I think there's a lot of beauty in that, because I don't have to have it all buttoned up. If there's anybody that tells you they've got all the answers and they know every little in and out of everything, if they've got the solution, then they're lying to you or they're trying to sell you something. Because nobody's got all the answers.
That's why we need God.
That's why we need God. Amen.
It's probably rooted in one of those words up there, delusional, you know.
Denial.
There's a lot of people that think that I can't show my vulnerability. I can't be less than a man.
That's right.
You know, it's, I don't know how, I guess society, I guess the shows we watch, the people we hang out with, you just get these ideas. This is how I'm supposed to be.
That's right.
And it really, we screw each other up.
Amen.
We do. And don't do the work and don't sit in it, like you said.
You got to sit
Do
in
the
it.
work.
But we're so avert. If you hate those feelings, then you hate how you're made. And you won't trust the one who made you. So if you if you have contempt for those feelings, and then you have contempt for how you're made, and you won't trust the one who made you. Because he gave us those tools. And we all had them when we were babies. That's the only language we had. We didn't have any verbal capacity. We couldn't think. All we had was that. But then as we got older, we learned that those things are bad and scary and they're going to get you in trouble. So you have to use your brain to hide what's happening inside of there instead of using your brain to express that. I remember when my daughter, she was 3 at the time, we were at the park, and she was going around to all the kids, and she'd go, do you want to play with me? And in her little lispy voice, do you want to play with me? And the kid would say, nope. She'd go, do you want to play with me? Nope. Do you want to play? I said, honey, come here. You can't do that. Like, you got to stop doing, like, you can't keep going, because daddy's having like some feelings here. I don't want you to get hurt, so you need to stop doing that. And I remember the way she looked at me. She was like, well, that's how God made me. Like, I'm supposed to reach out in connection to other people, but you're telling me that's bad, and you're my dad, and I can't survive without you, so I'll change me to make you okay.
You feel better, yeah. It's a good example.
I harmed her that day. I told her to keep all that bottled up and hide it and not express it to make her dad not have feelings. Yeah. And just example after example.
Reverse that, though. I mean,
Thank God for reconciliation.
And talk about that.
Yeah. And now we have an amazing relationship. And now, when this was a couple years ago, she said she got in the car with me, and we're going to go. I had to go run an errand, and she jumped in my car. Says, let's go to Toys R Us. And I was like, well, honey, I'm not going to Toys R Us. I'm going to the car wash or whatever. And she said, well, she got all mad and slammed the door and left. And then I came back later and I said, honey, I felt hurt when you only wanted to hang out with me because we were going to Toys R Us. And she started bawling. And I let her do it. Just let her have those feelings. I can't fix it. This is how I feel. But it was like one of those fork in the road moments with our relationship. It's like everything kind of changed for the better at that point. Because she saw me bringing my heart to her. I let her have hers. And then we just process it together. Like, we don't have to manage each other's feelings. We don't have to manage each other's emotions. And so anyway, there's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of freedom in that. And you'll see that. If you want a conflict resolution one-liner, I feel blank when you do blank or did blank or said blank, and I need blank. And then shut up. Don't add anything to it. Don't elaborate. I felt hurt or sad or lonely or angry when you did this, and here's what I need. And then stop talking. And then let them have their feelings. And there's a thing in recovery called your side of the street. Like, if my side of the street is clean, then that's all I have to worry about. I got to quit peeking over the guardrail at my wife's side of the street. Well, you do this, and every time you do this, because that never goes anywhere. Every time I look over to her side of the street, it is off the rails, and I have no business doing that. That's not my side of the street.
Does that apply to closets too?
You feel what when you see his closet?
Well, we gonna go there? I feel sorry for him because it's not as crowded as mine.
That's not on the list. But yeah.
Mine's the messy one, so.
Yeah, and I'm not qualified to do the psychological underpinning, but I know exactly what my guy would say to me, but I'm going to keep my mouth shut. Because that comes from our story. When the event, when the reaction is bigger than the event, then we're going back into our old story. Like when we blow up because you left your underwear on the floor, well, that's not really about the underwear on the floor. That's something in the past that triggered. And now we have all these trigger warnings. And we want beanbag chairs and safe spaces and all these environments that we can create so that nobody has feelings. Because they're so incapable of doing those that we have to create all these rooms and environments and events and spaces to keep people from having feelings. Like, come on. So, anyway, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. I've got nothing to sell. All right, y'all have a blessed night. Thank you.
I want to say too that as the office manager for over 2 years here, when there's conflict, because there is, we're humans, that's the way Dr. Ben handles our meetings. We get in a circle, he gets the feelings out, and he directs us, even if we have feelings toward you.
Please.
Or toward each other, and it's made us all so much healthier and just closer with each other. It's a small family, but it's just what he's learned through his growth has affected us, his team.
Sure.
And it's
Like a pebble dropping in the water, it ripples out.
And if Suzanne does something that I have feelings about, and I don't bring those to her, and I just kind of, well, that's no big deal, I'll deal with that later, then I'm going to make up a story. She always does this, or she's just this, or she's just, and then that's going to push us apart in relationship. So it doesn't, the only way to bring us together as a as a cohesive unit, family, a team, whatever else, is we have to bring my experience to you and then let you have your feelings about it. And then if you have feelings about it, then we bring it back and forth.
Well, because I will get emotional and just be over the top, and I've learned so much about this is more orderly and it's more effective and it's more truthful.
Yeah.
So he's taught me, not just my chiropractor and my boss, but also mentor. Even though I'm the oldest one in the
I've got the best team.
Say that. If you're breathing, you're learning. That's right. Amen.
And one thing Chip will always say is vulnerability is the key that unlocks the treasure trove to the life you're made to have. You got to start there. Because otherwise we'll put up the walls and we'll make up stories. We'll push people away. Yes, you have to have boundaries. You don't let people hurt you, and there's healthy knowing. I remember when I got out of treatment, I would come, people would say, "How you doing today?" I was like, "I feel sad and hurt and lonely today." And they're like, "Whoa, what about the Titans?" Like so there's a little bit of knowing when it comes to that stuff. You don't bring your heart to the Publix person, at the checkout line necessarily. But I do have a superpower now. So I pulled into this guy's neighborhood, this is a couple years ago, and I pulled my front tires onto his driveway. Like I was making a U-turn. I had to use his driveway to make the U-turn. Yeah. He comes charging out of his garage like one of those deals. So I rolled my window down. I was like, "Hey, man, how are you doing today?" And it totally disarmed him. Oh. He was ready to fight. Okay. And then he kind of did like, "Oh, hey." Like, "Have a good day." Like, that's a superpower. Because before, I would have turned off the engine and jumped out and done that stupid stuff. And now, like, what do I do that for? There's no reason for me to get big and get loud and get aggressive unless you're hurting my family. And then that's, game on. But in general, there's no reason for me to get into those impairment columns if it's not, physical violence is being threatened.
Well, I don't know. There just seems to be a whole lot of anger in the world, and you can see it when you get on social media.
And it's fear and rage.
Sits behind a keyboard and they say really mean things to a complete stranger.
Right.
On social media, it just blows me away.
It's so true.
What people say.
And I just
you wouldn't say that to my face. Why
No.
are you typing it on here?
And now I just feel so sad for people that would do that. Like, it's so sad that you would take time out of your day just to criticize somebody else's post.
That's their own life. That's what's sad.
Yeah.
It brings them joy, I guess. I don't know. It makes them feel bigger.
No, it's a drug.
Logical.
It medicates their own shame and their own loneliness and their own fear. Social media is the best drug of all time. Because we can look at other people's lives and compare their highlight reel to my crappy life, and then compare my insides to their outside, and then I could use that as a drug to keep me from dealing with what's happening inside me. Because if you sit with yourself, guess what you're going to find? You're going to find more of yourself or God. And for some people, that sitting with myself thing is not a nice place to be.